back to the tin barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and I got a little project today that's going to involve turning a piece of this 4-inch angle iron, hopefully into a semi-precision angle block. Now I've already got this one. This one is a it's about 4.5 by 5. This is 4-inch channel. And when this project's all said and done, I will have obviously been able to, purchase 2 or 3 of these import ones for what it's going to take to turn this into one as far as labor is concerned. But a friend of mine brought a couple of pieces of these over a while back that he had picked up off of either a job site or at a salvage yard when he stopped by. And they are, unlike a lot of angle iron, they are actually flat across here instead of being angled up. So they'll make a good block for holding stuff. He brought 2 of them. One of them I've actually used as a 90 degree for welding stuff. But I'm doing this project primarily for more experience on the surface grinder. Like those of you who follow my channel know that I've picked up a surface grinder a few months ago, and I'm still need experience on it. Also, I think this will give me some good experience on work holding. Because it's going to be, a little bit of a challenge to hold this in the mill. We're going to start with the mill and face off, probably use a fly cutter to get these flat and get them reasonably 90 degrees to each other. We're going to turn the ends as well, or we're going to mill the ends, make them as flat and hopefully as square as is reasonable, and also the top edges. So a lot of work involved in this at a deal primarily with the mill and the surface grinder. But what I'm going to do first is take this over to the saw and saw off one end to make a 6-inch piece. There's no need of keeping this any longer than 6 inches. It's about 8 inches now. My mill table is 6 inches. And the surface grinder chuck is 6 inches. So I'm going to cut this off. It's going to leave a hole in one side, but we'll work around that. Okay, I've got it cut off to about a 6-inch piece now, just a little over 6 inches. We're going to set this up on the mill now, and mill our 3 slots in there. The way we're going to set it up is going to set this piece on, clamp it down, and mill 3 slots in each side. Then we'll come back and weld in some corner gussets before we start doing the heavy machining on this. So I'm going to get set up on the mill and be back shortly. Okay, I've got my store-bought angle block mounted to the mill vise now. Got it trimmed so that it's perpendicular to the x-axis. Got our workpiece clamped on to the angle block. It's a little out of square right now. It's one of the things we got to do, but that won't make any difference on milling these grooves in here, or 3 slots on each side. First thing what I want to do though is clean off this edge over here and this edge, at least on the corner down here, so I've got a good point that I can locate center from when it's turned this way and when it's turned the other way. All these edges, the ends, the tops, and the flat surfaces are going to be surface ground. But again, right now all I want to do is flatten out this so that I've got a good point to locate a center from. All right, I'm going to continue this process, cleaning up both ends, and I'll bring you back when we get ready to start cutting the slots. All right, I've got the first slot milled out. I'm happy with that. What I did once I got to my ends and got all the way through, I stepped over 10 thousandths on each side, did a climb mill in there, and cleaned up the surfaces. So now I'm going to move 1.5 inches on each side and cut another one. This will go through that hole that's in there. But I'll cut this one, then I'll mill this one out on the other side. Once I get those done, turn the piece over, locate center based on these milled edges, and put 3 slots in the other side as well. All right, I've got all 6 of the grooves milled out now, the slots on both sides. What we're going to do next is take some of these little corner gussets like this. I took a couple of them and rounded off the corners. I'm going to put those in, clamp them down good, measure up and clamp them down good, like such. Carry these out to the welder. I'm probably not trying to carry the camera out there, but just weld these in place, one on each side. Then we'll come back and actually start doing some fly cutting on these surfaces right here to try to get them as close to 90 degrees to each other as possible. I got the corner gussets welded in now, and I used a flat edge or straight edge to try to determine which one of these flats was the closest to being flat. This one's got a little mound in the middle on this side. The side that I have bolted up to my existing angle plate was the flattest of the two. So we're going to start with that as being our starting point. I've got another little jack propped under here, just for help cut down a little bit maybe of vibrations with the angle bracket mounted down, these corner gussets in. I don't think it's going to vibrate much, but this should help it. We're going to try to flatten this out with the fly cutter. Then we'll come back and turn it around, do the other side, and we should be ready to go to the surface grinder at that point. These first couple of passes with the fly cutter are just going to be to try to find the high spot on here. If you saw a little movement in it, I didn't have the y-axis locked down, and the backlash in the table moved it back just a couple thousandths when it got close to that outside edge. So I've got it locked down now. And again, we're just looking the high spots. I'll bring you back when I start making contact all the way across the piece. Okay, I think it's going to clean up all the way across now. This will be 37 thousandths deep that I had to go from the highest spot on here to a point where it cleaned up all the way around. So I'm going to go all the way around on this last pass and see if it cleans up. Don't want to go quite that fast though. To keep from throwing the chips right back on me, instead of cutting back in this direction, I'm just going to try to leave the Z-axis set where it is and come back to the starting side over here. It may just clip that edge just a little bit. And this should be the last pass. All right, that's got that edge cleaned up good. I'll take this off, deburr it, show you what it looks like, and then we'll turn it around and do the other flat. All right, here's what the surface looks like from the mill, and there's what we just come up with the fly cutter. So I'm going to mount this up here, and then I'll fly cut this, and then I'll meet you over on the surface grinder, and we'll start looking at that setup. Both of the faces have been cleaned up with the fly cutter now. And I got to start somewhere. So I'm just going to take one of these sides. I've dressed the wheel, stoned the chuck. So I'm just going to take one side to begin with, put that down. We're going to dress this top edge up here. We're going to do the same thing with this. And then we'll take our angle plate and put back over here and start surface grinding the large flats. Now I'll move it down on the chuck just a little bit, get it centered with the wheel. I have me a center mark on the face of the chuck down here. Now I'm just going to ease back and forth, try to find the high spot, and work from there. Going down 1/1000 each time and stepping over 100,000 until I get a clean pass all the way across. All right, I think about another thousandths, and then we'll have a contact on the whole surface. A little bit on this front edge right here, inside edge, and go another thousandths. All right, so I'm simply going 1, 2, 3, 3/10. I'm going to step over 20 thousandths at a time. right, I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn it over, turn it around, do the other edge. Very nice finish. Okay, and just like before, I'm going to find my my high point. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on this edge. Then I'll bring it back when we get ready to set it up and do the flats. To surface grind the flat edges, the large flat edges, I've got my, again, my store-bought angle block that I'm depending on being square. Got it sitting on the magnetic chuck. I'm going to use one of these transfer blocks, even though it's not really going to transfer any of the magnetism to the plate. It will down here and help hold this edge a little bit. So I'm going to lock those down. I'm putting the angle plate on this end of the magnetic chuck. Since the wheel is rotating clockwise, that will be pushing against the angle plate and against the most surface on the magnetic chuck. And we want to be sure it's setting down good on this edge under here that we just surface ground, just like we did this edge. All right, and just like all the other grinding exercises, I'm going to find the high spot first and then just start working down 1/1000ths at a time until we get the entire surface cleaned up, and then we'll start our final dressing. So I'll bring you back when we get a little closer. Okay, to clean up that surface all the way across, it only took 3.5 thousandths. I'm very pleased with that result from the fly cutter. So now we're ready to start making a couple of final passes. That's 0.3 of a thousandths there. And again, we're going to step over very slowly, 20 thousandths at a time. Just try to clean up the final surface on this. Very good looking finish. I'm going to go half of that now, and only 0.2 of a thousandths. Still going to step over 20 thousandths at a time. But I'll continue that process until I get back off the other side. Okay folks, I'm extremely pleased with that final finish on there. Right around where this hole, that original hole was stamped out, I didn't try to surface grind that, I didn't try to fly cut it nor surface grind to get that last little bit out. It's just where it was rolled, where that hole was stamped out. But I'm very pleased with that. I'm going to turn it over now, or turn it around, and get this last fly cut side. So I'm going to set that back up. I'll tighten that down, be sure it's flat on here, surface grind that just like I did the other one. Then I'll bring you back when we get ready to do these ends. All right, I've got both of the flat surfaces ground now to a surface I'm happy with. Now I need to get these ends. And these ends were just milled off while it was set up in the mill. Nothing was square, really square at that time. But on the x-axis, course, it's up against the block, right on. And in this direction, what I'm doing is using a machinist square. I've got the chuck on now, the mag chuck on. And I'm just looking for any light between there. And what I've done is snug it up, and well, what I did was tighten the magnet up and then bump this around until I was satisfied with it. Now I'm going to snug it up, check it again. All right, I'm happy there. That is, with the equipment I've got, I believe that is about as close as I'm going to get it to setting straight up, and that seems to be the only hole that I can bolt through. So I'm going to be sure that that's tight. Double check one more time. Now, without taking the chuck, turning it off, see if I can work that off. Now I'm going to get this edge and this edge all the way around. All right, so there's a good starting point. All right, we found the high spot. Excuse me. And just like before, I'll work down a thousandths at a time until I've dressed it up, cleaned it up all the way across. All right, we're cleaned up all the way across, so we'll take our 4/10 pass on here now to do our final cleanup. All right, so we're cleaned up there. Now I'm going to turn it over, do the same thing to the other end. Now that we've got a square end on here now, it shouldn't be as much of an issue to get it plumb and square in the other direction. After I get that done, we'll go back over to the workbench and do a little recap on this project. Okay, I think we're ready to conclude this project. If you recall, this is what we started with. Piece of rough angle iron, mill scale, the whole works. I had two pieces of it. And here's what we've wound up with. I do not have a squareness comparator right now. I'm working on one. I got a project going, but I set this up on the block on the surface plate, and with shining the light through there, I'm seeing with the filler gauge it's about 0.02 at the bottom. But I put this import one I used to hold the work on there and saw the exact same thing, that it's out of square just a little bit at the top. So as I said at the beginning of this project, this was as much of a learning experience as anything else. Work holding, getting more time on the surface grinder, more fly cutter time. I hadn't done a whole lot of work with the fly cutter, but overall I think it turned out real well, and it'll be something that I can use in here. When I get a squareness comparator built, I may see just how much it's off. If it's off more than, say, 0.03, I may try to grinding it again. And I may very well even turn this block, do the same thing with this piece of angle. I had one goof up on there when I was cutting this slot that had this interruption with the existing hole that was in there. I didn't realize it until it was too late, but I did not have the x-axis tightened down on the mill, and it wandered just a little bit right there. So I got to jiggle right there, but it's, you know, again, it's something I can live with. This project, again, was as much for a learning experience as anything else. The grinding turned out real well. I'm very pleased with that. So, hope you learned a little bit from it, got a little bit of enjoyment out of it, and we'll see you on the next video.